Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Trust fund boss has never lived in the real world. Thought I should brave a Category 1 hurricane to go to work, while he drove to the beach. Gets mad when I quit after getting yelled at in front of customers. The second story. The entitled employee says that we stole her goods, for which we have a receipt. The third story. After scolding me so much for my actions and passive-aggressively hinting towards firing me, boss gets peeved at me when I quit. The first story is, trust fund boss blamed me for ruining his vacation. Oh, and a hurricane. So I quit. A few years ago, a hurricane hit our area that's rather far inland. My boss and owner of the company, despite everyone telling him that it was coming this way, and that we needed to secure everything and probably close for a few days, told us that we had to be in because he was going on vacation to the beach. Keep in mind that everyone in this situation included his employees, the National Weather Service, every media outlet, an e-commerce giant who just automatically put our store in vacation mode because they knew we wouldn't be able to ship, and the state governments of 2 states who were actively evacuating the area where he was headed for vacation. And I mean the states were switching traffic flow so that both sides of the interstate headed out of coastal areas. This was big, and he was headed directly into oncoming traffic. Boss was a trust fund kid. He went to the best schools his parents could afford. The entire company, all 30 stores at the largest, were started by his father to make sure boss wouldn't starve to death. After the 3rd bankruptcy, yes, 3 in 10 years, he kept forming new companies to buy old ones. I found out during an all-staff meeting that he was an accounting major and burst out with, "You've got to be kidding me," before I could stop myself. While his father had rewarded ingenuity and promoted and trained people from within, including many women and people of color during the late 60s and early 70s, boss only hired from outside of the company, and it was generally cisgender white men who shared a hobby with him. When filling a warehouse management role, he literally asked interviewees if they liked bicycles, because he was looking for someone to ride bikes with. By the time of our hurricane, boss had taken the company from 30 stores to 3. I ran 2 of these, one dealing with e-commerce and the other the physical store at our HQ, though he refused to give me the management titles at either, and I didn't get the pay raise, and idiot me still did the work. Some things about the relationship between boss and I. He liked to text me the poop emoji when he felt I'd done something wrong, but would never tell me what it was. I was just supposed to know what caused him to be angry enough to send me a smiling poop. He made all the schedules, including putting himself on there, but then would just not show up. He'd also just leave in the middle of the day without telling me, so I was on a bad side of town in a large building by myself, with high-dollar items that sold well on the black market. I was literally held up 4 times in 1 week. He got mad when I wouldn't chase the thieves, but also wouldn't let me put security cables on the high-dollar items because it looked bad. What didn't look bad was burnt-out light bulbs he refused to replace, the cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and banners, or the roof that literally leaked onto registers and computer, and required buckets when I had to empty fairly often. I literally bought cheap tarps to throw over our registers in work areas so none of us would get electrocuted. He got mad because the water from the tarps drained onto the carpet, staining it. As an aside, I found out that he dumped the buckets of rainwater and mop buckets in the water fountain rather than the toilet or out the back door. My computer finally died from literally being rained on. My budget to replace it, $100. And when I bought something capable of running Windows 10 rather than XP, he got mad and demanded a new computer too. I'm not sure why he demanded I find him a new computer. He was in control of the money and could buy one whenever he well pleased. He would schedule me from exactly open to close, then get mad that I didn't arrive early to set up the store, nor stay late to recover it. Doing either would require overtime, and overtime got you poop emojis. He covered me for my lunches, and by cover I don't mean he'd watch cameras and then all page throughout the building that I had a customer coming. He got mad when my lunches were less than 30 minutes though, and tried to edit my time to reflect a full lunch being taken, despite my serving customers rather than eating. He once said he wouldn't give me the management title because he couldn't trust me to arrive on time, because I live so far away, 45 minutes by interstate. He thought I should rent a house in town, and told me the rent for a house in his neighborhood was probably around $300 a month. I laughed in his face because rent for a studio apartment in the city was around $1,500 a month at the time. Renting a hotel room in his neighborhood costs more than $300 a night, much less renting an entire house for a month. Back to that fateful day. Boss is headed to the beach and said no one is to disturb him, but I could see we were about to get hit by a Category 1 hurricane, so went in and updated our website to display a notice in bright red at the top of every page that we were suspending operations at my store and our online store. I call my coworkers and tell them not to come in. The other store, the manager lived fairly close and said he'd go in, but wasn't going to require anyone else to. Since I worked in building with a co-lander for a roof, I knew it was already going to be a mess. I didn't call or text boss any of this because he's an idiot driving into a hurricane, and I'm not allowing him to make my life decisions. In the end, the bridge that leads into my neighborhood completely washed out, trapping me for a few days. A coworker was trapped in her new neighborhood because downed power poles trapped her in. She was the only one living in a new apartment building and had power and water, so they deemed it not an emergency to get her out of there quickly. We were so lucky this hurricane caused nearly $20 billion in damages in the state, spawned dozens of tornadoes, destroyed 20 dams. No one was shopping. We were all trying to stay safe. Except boss. When I arrived back to work on Monday, boss is there and he's livid. On the sales floor in front of a customer, he started yelling at me about not opening, that I was personally costing him money, and he would make me pay for the lost sales and for ruining his vacation. He'd apparently worried all weekend about our store not being opened, rather than about the fact that he was trapped in a hurricane or about our safety. The customer got really uncomfortable and left as he's yelling at me in front of water-soaked merchandise. I was so peeved. As he left the sales floor, expecting me to clean up and mop the entire store, while also managing the websites and wait on customers. Instead, I started packing my belongings, uninstalling my personal software from my computer, and removing my own rights to our social media platforms. An hour later, he comes back out for round 2 of yelling at me. I didn't yell back. I just waited for him to pause to catch his breath, and I handed him the store key. I wish I could say that was it, but I spent the next month getting texts and emails from various people within the company asking for my help with problem A or problem B. I never responded with more than an I no longer work for the company and no longer have access to anything. I ended up unfriending someone I'd known since college because they couldn't take the hint. In the end, they lost the e-commerce stores, as they had no idea on how to run them, and a year after I left, he sold the last remaining store to a major competitor that he'd almost bought 15 years before, and then screwed over at the last minute, creating a ton of bad blood. Needless to say, he got next to nothing for the name he'd ran into the ground, and took a loss on the merchandise. Hilariously, no one ever listened when I tried to show them how to turn announcement banners off on the website. So until the day that the new company I replaced the website over a year after the hurricane, in bold white letters on a blood red background, the every page of the website still contained a banner that read, "Due to specific hurricane, our stores will be closed and shipping may be delayed. Please contact us for more information." The second story is accused of theft with a receipt in hand. My family and I are visiting Salem, Massachusetts this weekend. My autistic teen is really hyper-focused on witchcraft lately and had been stoked about visiting all the shops. In one shop, the woman working the counter was really amazing, telling him cool stories behind a lot of herbs they sell. He bought a book from her shop, refused a bag to save waste, and we went merrily on our way to the next shop. Next shop, he picked out a somewhat expensive wand, and I picked out a pretty candle. We go to check out and the shopkeep keeps trying to ring us up for the book in my husband's hand. My son passed it to him to hold while he looked at the wand. Completely honest mistake, so we just showed her our receipt and figured that would be it. It was not. She took the book from my husband and kept saying it's her book and that we have a problem. Her reason was that she said the price on the receipt is different than the book. Confused, we said that it was really weird. We just bought it from a shop a few minutes ago and it's the receipt that we were given. She threatened to go review the video, and we said great. That would be great. It'll show my son was literally reading it as we walked in the door and we can get on with it. At this point, my husband and I are still being patient and figuring this will be a simple thing to clear up. It's busy and we understand mistakes happen. She goes back to just saying over and over that we have a problem and that she knows it's her book. I'm getting frustrated and say that's a bit much. It's a common beginning witchcraft book that's sold in practically every single shop we've been in, and we literally have the receipt. She's insisting that we took it from her store because the price on the book is different than the receipt. Receipt has the title of the book printed, by the way. She has the book in her hand and refuses to give it back. My son begins getting really agitated, and my daughter begins to cry. I tell them to go wait outside. My husband is insisting she check her video, and she's refusing now, saying that she just knows it's her book, because of the price difference. Now we feel like we're crazy, so we start going through every bag we have thinking perhaps we did pick up her book by mistake. No book. Now we're at a standoff. She will not give us the book back even though we have the receipt in hand. We are getting frustrated. It's been a few minutes of this back and forth and now we just want the book so we can leave and skip the purchases. I asked my husband to let me check the receipt, and it says the title of the book and $28.99 is the price. I say this and she says no, it says $26.99. I look again, no, it says $28.99 and hand it back to her. She inspects the receipt for a minute, then pulls another customer in. There's a crowd waiting to be checked out to look at our receipt. That person also says it's $28.99. The shopkeep looks very angry for some reason, then starts actually yelling at us that we're supposed to have a bag from the shop that sold it to us. WTF? Now my husband has gotten to the end of his very long rope and tells her that as long as we have a receipt, there's no bag requirement. We've given her the proof of purchases and we want that book back. She gives it back and continues to berate us for not having a bag. I say we're done here and never mind the 90 purchases. We're leaving. Get this. She starts screaming, "No, I'm throwing you out. Get out," and starts coming around the counter at us. Absolutely nuts. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I'm honestly a bit freaked out, so I run outside. My husband has a few choice words to her about her treatment of us, then meets us out front. We're standing there catching our breath and trying to calm down our kids, and two women come out of the store to console us. They both say that they're going online to give poor reviews based on our treatment, and that the woman was obviously in the wrong and should have just apologized for the confusion. It took us a good hour to calm down and get back into the holiday spirit. I was freshly angry this morning. And the last story is scolded for putting in 2 weeks' notice. I, 22NB, was originally hired by a small engineering firm. By my second week of working there, he had me sit in his office, and in a very angry tone told me that he didn't like the dynamic that was forming, and how I need to actually do everything he tells me to do. I was really trying, but every time he told me what needed to be done, he gave me several tasks, didn't explain things clearly, and spoke it very fast, so I unintentionally missed a couple of things. At this meeting, he essentially told me that if it continues, he'll fire me. A couple weeks later, I was asked to sit down with him again. At this meeting, he told me that wearing Hawaiian shirts wasn't acceptable, because they aren't business casual and I can't wear them if I want to have a good long career with the company. This, as well as other comments and the general attitude in the office, made me uncomfortable. Anyway, I got an offer for my dream job recently, and immediately put in my 2-week notice, which would make the 29th my last day. My boss came back from his vacation on the 18th, and I was told I needed to meet with him and one of the other head engineers. At this meeting, I was scolded and told that I was the most unprofessional person they've worked with, that I was a liar, and finally that by the end of the day, I needed to turn in my keys and take the rest of my time at the company off. I'm now essentially jobless for 2 weeks until my new job starts. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.